I'm Emma Brooks, 30 years old, and just last week, I celebrated closing my biggest client deal to date, $45,000 0 cents on a single branding project. The summer sun shimmered off the patio table at my Seattle townhouse as I raised a glass of lemonade, feeling I'd finally arrived. My best friend Chloe snapped photos. "This is it, Em," she said, her voice full of pride, but none of them knew the price I'd paid to get here. 2 days earlier, my mother had called, her tone colder than a February gale. "Don't expect any more help from us," she said, the words slicing through me like shards of glass. She mentioned nothing about the late consultancy fee I'd covered for my sister's wedding dress, $3,200 0 cents out of my savings, nor about the trust fund she'd quietly cut me out of. In that single moment, the world I'd built felt alarmingly fragile, and as I stood there in my sunlit backyard, heart pounding, I realized the only way forward was to rewrite the rules of my own story. I can still taste the sweet tang of homemade cranberry sauce as Grandma June scooped another dollop onto my plate, the late November chill nipping at our noses outside the cabin windows. It was Thanksgiving, but the sun had decided to linger a little longer that year, casting golden streaks across the pine-dusted lawn. I remember the way the firelight danced across her silver hair, how her soft laugh echoed off the log walls, and how I, just a wide-eyed 10-year-old, felt like the most important person in the world. Every year, my family piled into the minivan for the 5-hour drive from our cramped Seattle apartment up to Lakeview, Michigan. My mom, Evelyn, always drove, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. My dad, Mark, sat shotgun, offering silent commentary in the form of sighs. My older sister, Lauren, was glued to her Game Boy, headphones clamped over her ears, and I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, staring out at the endless cascade of evergreen trees, imagining we were heading straight into a fairy tale. Grandma June's cabin was a world apart. She had a thing for mismatched floral curtains and cast-iron skillets seasoned to perfection. The living room smelled of pine and pumpkin pie, and the dining table groaned under the weight of her famous green bean casserole, the one with crispy onions on top, mashed potatoes whipped to a cloud-like fluff, and turkey so tender it practically melted in your mouth. She always saved the biggest slice of pie for me, pecan, pumpkin, or apple, depending on the year. That simple act made me feel seen. I'd sneak downstairs before sunrise, tiptoeing past Mom and Dad's room to sit by Grandma's kitchen counter. She'd be humming an old jazz tune, coffee mug in hand, flour dusting her apron like freshly fallen snow. "Mornin', pumpkin," she'd say, sliding over a chocolate chip cookie straight from the oven. In those moments, as the world outside remained hushed and still, I felt the warmth of belonging wrap around me like a cozy quilt. Back then, Mom and Dad were always busy. My dad managed logistics at a wholesale office supply company. He was great at spreadsheets but terrible at bedtime stories. My mom juggled marketing deadlines for a regional sports network and somehow still found the energy to fret over my grades and Lauren's ever-escalating social calendar. I loved them fiercely, but I often felt like a guest star in my own home. Lauren, 2 years my senior, seemed to thrive on being the center of attention. She'd charm our teachers with her contagious laugh, lead group projects with an effortless confidence, and coax Mom into buying her the latest fashion must-haves. Everyone loved Lauren. At least, that's how it looked. And me? I was Emma, quiet, observant, the artsy kid who doodled in the margins of her notebooks. I found solace in sketching rustic cabins and golden sunsets, filling journals with half-written stories about girls who discovered hidden treasures in their grandparents' attics. Grandma always encouraged my creativity, framing my drawings on the mantelpiece beside her collection of snow globes. "You've got magic in your hands, Emma." she'd say, ruffling my hair. Her faith in me felt like a lifeline. That Thanksgiving, I remember sneaking out of the cabin after dinner to watch the stars emerge. The sky above Lakeview was impossibly dark, each pinprick of light stark against the velvet backdrop. I leaned against the weathered railing of the porch, goosebumps spreading across my arms, and whispered my first big secret dream. I want to move to Seattle and become a famous illustrator someday. My breath puffed out in a haze, the night air crisp with possibility. The next morning, Grandma slipped me an envelope thick with crisp bills. $500, 0 cents for art supplies and life's little adventures. I stared at it, stunned. She winked. Consider it your seed money, kiddo. Plant it wisely. I tucked it into my sketchbook and carried it like gold for the rest of my stay. Over the years, those trips became our ritual. We'd carve pumpkins together in October, laughter echoing as seeds and strings went flying. She taught me how to knead bread dough, how to time the perfect soft-boiled egg, and how to find serenity in the hush before dawn. She never pressured me to be anything other than myself, and because of her, I learned that art could be both a refuge and a rebellion. By the time I turned 18, I'd amassed a portfolio thick enough to open my own sketchbook gallery online. I enrolled at the University of Washington for graphic design, barely pausing to breathe before launching my first freelance gig. From my cramped apartment overlooking Capitol Hill, I painted logos for local coffee shops and designed invitations for indie bands. Each project felt like another step out of the shadows of my old life. Through it all, Grandma's voice echoed in my head, "You've got magic in your hands." When I landed a $15,000 0 cents contract to rebrand a boutique bookstore in Fremont, I called her before anyone else. She laughed into the phone so hard I could almost see her shaking. "That's my girl," she said. "Now go get 'em." Meanwhile, the distance between us and my immediate family grew. I tried to call home, more texts, emojis, video calls, but Mom's replies were perfunctory and often late. Lauren barely acknowledged my successes, as if my accomplishments were footnotes in her own story. And Dad? He stuck to his spreadsheets, eyes cast downward, fingers tapping keys in endless rhythm. When Grandma fell ill, heart complications that slipped into her routine checkups like an uninvited winter chill, I dropped everything to fly back to Lakeview. I remember bursting into the hospital room breathless and tearful as she managed a weak grin. "Thought you might be busy," she teased, holding out her frail hand. I clasped it, the lines of her palm soft and familiar beneath my fingers. "I'm here," I promised. For the first time, the roles reversed. I sat by her bedside sketching portraits of us together, the two of us on the porch, me sneaking a cookie, her apron splattered with flour. She traced the outlines with her finger, then leaned close and whispered, "Promise me you'll keep going no matter what." And I promised, though my voice wavered. When she passed that spring, I felt a piece of myself slip away. At her funeral, under a sky so gray it seemed endless, I delivered the final goodbye. I clutched my sketchbook, pages fluttering like reluctant wings, and read aloud a eulogy I had spent nights perfecting. She taught me to see beauty in the simplest moments, to trust in the quiet spark inside me, to be fearless when chasing my dreams. My voice cracked, but I finished. And as I laid down the portrait I'd drawn of her, I felt a profound peace. That summer, I inherited her cabin and the little trust she'd set up for me, $75,000 0 cents, earmarked for my creative future. Grandma had played her final card, ensuring that even in her absence, I would never doubt my worth. I spent weeks painting the cabin walls in muted sage green, turning the spare bedroom into a loft studio. Every brushstroke felt like a conversation between us. Now, sitting on my Seattle patio with that $45,000 0 cents check in my hand, I know exactly how far I've come. From the early mornings in a drafty cabin to late nights in a city that never sleeps, my journey has been fueled by Grandma's unwavering belief. And yet, as I hear the laughter of my friends behind me and the clinking of glasses, I can't shake the ache of what's missing, of the family who seemed so eager to cut me off when the stakes got real. But I also know one thing. No matter how many times they tried to dim my light, I learned from Grandma that some sparks refuse to be extinguished. And that's the story I'm determined to tell. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when the shift happened. Maybe it was the day Mom stopped asking about my latest project, or when Lauren began posting staged family fun photos without me in them. But one afternoon in mid-July, I felt the first real tremor of tension. It started with a text. I was pacing my living room, phone pressed to my ear, celebrating a verbal go-ahead from the new wine bar on Capitol Hill, $8,200 0 cents for a full branding package, when a notification from Mom popped up. "Emma, call me when you get a chance." I slid my phone into my pocket and let the excitement simmer, only to find the message marked read without response an hour later. I tried again the next day. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to share that I'll be downtown tomorrow for client meetings. Lunch?" But no reply. A third text. "Is everything okay? Give me a buzz when you can." Was read almost instantly and then ignored. That's when I noticed something odd on social media. A cascade of photos from Lauren's weekend trip to Whidbey Island, driftwood beaches, wine tasting, sisterly smiles. Except my face was nowhere to be found. When I congratulated her, she replied, "We had a blast, maybe next time," with a winking smiley that felt more like a punch to the gut. Determined not to let family drama ruin my weekend, I joined Chloe at the Columbia City Farmers Market, but even the hum of conversation and clinking mason jars couldn't dull the ache each unread message from home left behind. Everything came to a head at the 4th of July block party. I lugged my signature Kayla quinoa salad, $27 0 cents worth of organic ingredients and 3 hours of prep, to the communal table, spotted Mom pouring lemonade with a tight-lipped smile, and offered my dish. She nodded politely. "Oh, Emma, thanks," then turned away to refill cups without so much as a question about how I'd been. Lauren appeared with guacamole, gave me a perfunctory nice salad, and walked off. My chest clenched as a call from Grandma June's trustee revealed that someone had tampered with my trust documents. My signature was forged on an amendment diverting funds elsewhere. I excused myself to the powder room, stared at the scan of my own shaky handwriting, and felt my stomach drop. Back outside, fireworks boomed, but the celebratory crackle felt hostile in my ears. Over the next week, every interaction with my family carried an undercurrent of unspoken questions. Dad's vague group email about renovating Grandma's cabin, Lauren's "hope you're doing well, let me know when you're free," and Mom's curt "fine" or "busy." Then at 9 p.m. one evening, a family group chat pinged, Evelyn and Mark planning a joint vacation in August, Lauren announcing her new fiancé, "Can't wait to show you Matt," and no invite for me. I let my phone clatter to the floor, the screen dimming into darkness, as my chest hollowed out like a cello with a broken string. When Friday rolled around, I paced my apartment, rehearsing an angry message. I want answers. Now. But froze at the blinking cursor. That night I dreamed I stood locked out of Grandma's cabin at dawn, banging on the door as pine needles whispered in the wind. At sunrise, determination ignited within me. They could try to cut me out, misappropriate Grandma's money and hide behind polite smiles, but I still had my head, my art, and the legal right to everything she intended for me. Squaring my shoulders, I drafted an email to our family attorney outlining the unauthorized amendments, withdrawals, and looming vacation plan, and hit send before doubt could stop me. My heart pounded not with fear but with resolve. I was done waiting in the shadows, and it was time to bring every hidden move into the light. The invitation arrived in my inbox 6 weeks before Lauren's wedding, a sleek, cream-colored card embossed with gold foil. It read, "Rehearsal dinner, Saturday, August 9th, 7:00 p.m. at the Loft at Mercer Street." I stared at it for longer than I'd like to admit, heart tightening as I read my name printed beside hers. After weeks of chilly silences and half-hearted texts, this felt like a lifeline, proof that maybe, just maybe, my family still wanted me there. On the night of the dinner, I slipped into a navy sheath dress, $220.00 from a boutique on Pine Street, and applied a simple rose-toned lipstick. I checked my reflection one last time, inhaled deeply, and stepped into the lift, gratitude churning with nerves in my stomach. The car wound through Pioneer Square's glowing streetlights and dropped me at the Loft's glass doors. I paid the $15.00 fare, smoothed my hair, and walked in. Inside, the space was airy and chic, Edison bulbs dangling overhead, distressed brick walls lined with framed wedding photos, and long communal tables set with white linens, silver chargers, and crystal wine glasses. At the far end stood an ornate head table draped in eucalyptus garlands. My pulse raced as I spotted familiar faces: Dad in his navy blazer, Mom draped in a silk wrap, Lauren's fiancé Matt beaming beside her. I approached quietly, clutching a gift bag, an artisan cheese board set, $135.00, I'd picked out myself. Dad saw me first. He gave a curt nod, his lips barely moving in greeting. Mom offered a tight-lipped smile and a curt, "Thank you for coming." Lauren, radiant in her blush-pink gown, reached out. "I'm so glad you made it," she said, but her eyes flicked to my chest as though measuring the value of my dress against her own. I forced a smile and laid the bag at her feet. We took our seats. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Servers in crisp black aprons poured glasses of Pinot Noir, $65.00 a bottle, and passed trays of past hors d'oeuvres, bacon-wrapped dates, ahi tuna crostini, and mini lobster rolls. I took a date, savoring its sweet, savory bite, and tried to relax. The rehearsal ran smoothly. The officiant handed out scripts. Bridesmaids and groomsmen practiced their lines. Lauren leaned over and whispered, "I'm so sorry about everything that's happened lately." I blinked, surprised by the apology I'd been craving. "I just want tonight to be perfect," she added, her voice soft. "For all of us." I squeezed her hand. "Me too," I said, feeling warmth flood my chest. Then Mom tapped her glass gently. Conversation stuttered and fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Lauren sat up straighter. I straightened too, eager for connection. Mom cleared her throat. "Before we begin, I want to address something important," she said, voice measured. I braced myself, heart hammering. Soft candlelight glossed over her face, highlighting a tension I hadn't seen before. "I know there's been talk about finances," she continued, gaze flicking to Lauren, then to Dad. "Some of you may wonder why Emma hasn't been as involved lately." She paused, and my stomach clenched. Mom unfolded a crisp sheet of paper, an amended family announcement drafted with legal precision. "Lauren, Mark, and I have always supported both of you," she said, eyes on me now. "But, after careful review, we discovered that Emma received the full distribution of Grandma June's trust. $75,000, 0 cents. Back in May. The room dissolved into murmurs. A flurry of whispered questions echoed off the brick walls. I sat frozen, blood draining from my face. Of course I'd inherited Grandma's gift, but never had I received it in full. Half had been earmarked for college savings, half for my creative endeavors, held in a trust that required quarterly disbursements. I'd only accessed $15,000, 0 cents so far, and the remainder was still under the trustee's oversight. Mom jabbed her finger at the paper. We've since discovered that Emma's access to those funds was immediate and unrestricted, which means she chose to invest $60,000, 0 cents of it, into her business without consulting the family. Her voice sharpened. That's hardly the kind of discretion we expected. A flush of heat rose up my neck. The betrayal wasn't just in the accusation. It was in the confidence with which they'd decided I'd used the money. Nobody had asked me for a single receipt, proof of expenditure, or explanation of my quarterly reports. Instead, they'd drawn conclusions, then plotted this public exposition. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Lauren's perfect posture snapped into a rigid line. Matt's brow furrowed. Dad's silence felt like a verdict. Flickers of candlelight danced across Mom's face, turning her eyes cold. Before I could respond, the maid of honor, a family friend named Jessica, stepped forward. She held a glass of rosé in one hand and a microphone in the other. To Lauren and Matt, she toasted, voice bright, a perfect match. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. I realized then that Mom had weaponized my vulnerability. She forced me into the center of attention, humiliated me, then stole the spotlight back with a celebration of Lauren's future. My throat tightened. I pressed my palms to the table, the linen bit into my fingertips, sharp, abrasive, real. I wanted to leap up and scream the truth, that my business expenses had been meticulously documented, that every dollar had a purpose, $12,500, 0 cents on software licenses, $8,200, 0 cents on the wine bar project, $3,600, 0 cents on new equipment, $45,000, 0 cents reinvested in hiring a junior designer. I wanted to show them the balance sheets, the bank statements, the trustees' emails confirming pending distributions. But the room pulsed with chatter and toasts. There was no clear moment to reclaim my voice. When the brief speech ended, servers brought out the main course, herb-crusted halibut, $42, 0 cents per plate, with truffle parmesan risotto. I watched as the plates glided by. My appetite vanished. Chloe, who'd flown in last minute, $350, 0 cents round-trip ticket to be my +1, sat at my left. She gave me a sympathetic squeeze under the table. I forced a nod and stabbed at my risotto, forcing down a single bite. Lauren caught my eye, lips pressed together. I saw remorse there, maybe regret, but also something harder, triumph. The twist cut deeper than being excluded. It was that they'd picked this moment, the night before her wedding, to cast me as the villain. I realized I wasn't just collateral damage. I was a character in their narrative, written to distract from Lauren's own financial missteps. Like that $12,500, 0 cents she'd quietly withdrawn from Grandma's trust into the L. Brooks account, the one my advisor had flagged. They'd built a story around me to hide her. After dinner, there was an awkward lull. Guests milled around the head table, offering polite smiles. I looked at Mom, her eyes averted, then at Dad, who stared at his plate. I wondered if they felt guilt or satisfaction, maybe both. Finally I stood. Chairs scraped. The room quieted again. I cleared my throat, voice low but steady. "I appreciate you all coming tonight," I began. every eye locked onto me. But I think there's been a misunderstanding. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a slim black folder, the one containing copies of every amended trust document, complete with certified signatures, and all my business expense reports, with invoices totaling $69,300.00 through July. These documents will show that I've been transparent with every dollar Grandma entrusted to me, and they'll show who actually amended the trust without my knowledge. I snapped the folder shut and met Mom's gaze. Tomorrow, before the wedding rehearsal, I'll be meeting with the family attorney. Everyone is welcome to join. I'd like full clarity and an apology before we take another picture together. A stunned silence followed. Lauren's jaw dropped so low I thought it might unhinge. Matt ran a hand through his hair. Guests exchanged confused glances. Then, Dad rose, pale and shamed. "Emma," he said, voice shaking, "maybe we should talk in private." "No," I interrupted, voice stronger than I'd felt all evening. "We'll talk right here, right now, in public." I nodded toward the folder. "Because there's nothing to hide." As I slipped out of the loft that night, heels clicking on the pavement, the night air cool on my skin, I felt the weight lift off my chest. They'd tried to corner me, humiliate me, paper me over with false accusations so their own secrets could stay buried. But I'd stood up, showing my cards on the table, refusing to play along. Under the street lamps I texted Chloe, "Tomorrow I'm done being the victim." She replied instantly, "Love you, Em. You got this." I smiled, head held high, and walked toward home, ready for the confrontation that would change everything. I barely made it back to my apartment before the dam inside me broke. The hallway was dim, one bare bulb overhead worrying out its last flicker, and the moment I shut the door I sank against it, knees folding inward as my breath unraveled in ragged sobs. I unzipped my dress at the shoulders and let it fall in a heap to the floor. My skin prickled as if every pore had been branded by that rehearsal dinner, by Mom's accusation, by the heavy silence that followed my own stand for truth. In the bathroom mirror, I saw red-rimmed eyes swimming in my reflection. My cheeks were stained with streaks of mascara, and the lipstick I'd chosen to look put together had smeared into angry smudges. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. It felt as though I were watching every failure I'd ever experienced loop in real time. All the achievements I'd clung to. $8,200.00 for the wine bar rebrand, $15,000.00 in quarterly trust disbursements, the $45,000.00 client deal. None of it mattered anymore. In my family's eyes, I was nothing more than someone to be discredited, someone whose name could be callously dropped to hide someone else's misdeeds. I dialed Chloe's number with shaking fingers. When she picked up, her calm voice was a lifeline. "Emma? I'm a mess," I confessed, pressing my forehead against the cold bathroom tile. They humiliated me tonight." "Breathe," she urged gently. "Get some water. Can you do that?" I filled my glass at the sink and tried to swallow, but my throat clenched. I paced the small space, squeezing the countertop until my knuckles turned white. Every surface seemed to echo with voices. Mom's clipped, "You chose to invest without consulting us," Lauren's triumphant smile, Dad's disappointed silence. It was as if the walls themselves had turned into silent witnesses of my disgrace. I scrubbed my face with cool water and wrapped myself in a gray cotton robe. Chloe stayed on the line softly, prompting me to slow my breathing, inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Eventually the sobs subsided into shaky hiccups, though my chest felt bruised. I sank onto the edge of the bathtub, still empty, and let my head fall into my hands. Images from my childhood flashed unbidden. Grandma June handing me that $500 0 cents at age 10, me clutching it like a treasure, the log cabin door closing after every summer visit, Mom worrying over my art grades, Dad tall and silent over balance sheets. In those memories I'd felt seen and loved. Now, standing up for myself felt like stepping into quicksand, a betrayal so deep I wasn't sure I could pull my arms free. I found myself dialing our family attorney, Miss Coldwell, before I even realized what I was doing. "Emma," she said, voice calm but firm, "I received your email. Let's schedule a call first thing tomorrow morning. For now, have you considered a therapist? Processing all this alone can leave you vulnerable to decisions made purely from pain." I swallowed hard. Therapy wasn't cheap. My last therapist charged $180 0 cents per session, but I nodded, despite my own financial exhaustion. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll look into it." After I hung up, I sank onto the bathroom floor. My phone buzzed again. A text from the trustee confirming receipt of my documentation and promising to freeze any further amendments until the attorney reviewed them. It should have been a relief, but instead my chest tightened at the reminder of how close I'd come to losing Grandma's legacy entirely. When I finally managed to pull myself to my feet, I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back looked fragile, like a porcelain doll cracked in dozens of places. I wrapped a towel around my hair and padded back to the bedroom, collapsing across my mattress and staring at the ceiling. I blinked back tears and let my thoughts drift to the unfairness of it all, how every milestone I'd celebrated felt tainted now, how every dollar earned and every sketch drawn had been weaponized against me. I drifted into an uneasy half-sleep, haunted by dreams of being locked inside Grandma's cabin while my family paraded past the windows, laughing, oblivious to my pounding heart. I woke at 3:17. I aimed to the shrill chirp of my phone's alarm. Chloe's morning reminder to schedule that therapy appointment. My whole body ached, and I pressed snooze. When morning light finally crept through the curtains, I felt heavy as lead. My eyes burned as though I'd run a marathon in my sleep. My phone screen glowed with a new email, an invitation to a local counseling center offering a sliding scale fee. It mentioned an initial intake session for $50 0 cents. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and replied, "Yes, I need an appointment." Then I did something I almost never allowed myself. I sat at my desk and opened my sketchbook. My pencil hovered over the blank page until I remembered Grandma's words. Art can be both a refuge and a rebellion. I sketched the porch of her cabin, the log beams, the pine trees swaying in an imagined breeze. Then I drew myself on the porch, broad shoulders squared, a folder clutched at my side. Underneath, in loopy script, I wrote, "I will stand my ground." The act of drawing felt like taking a tiny step forward, proof that even when my spirit felt battered, I could still reach for the spark inside me. I added splashes of color, warm ochre for the wood, forest green for the trees, a ribbon of sunrise gold spilling across the sky. Each stroke steadied my hand and hardened my resolve. I glanced at the clock. 7:45 IMMI. Soon I'd have to call Ms. Caldwell, review the trust freeze, and prepare for the attorney meeting Lauren and I had scheduled before the wedding rehearsal. But for these few moments, I allowed myself to acknowledge the raw bleed of emotion. My grief over Grandma's passing, my anger at my family's betrayal, my fear that standing up for myself would cost me their love forever. Then I packed up my sketchbook and pencil, pulled on a simple white tee and faded jeans, and tied back my hair. The robe from last night was still draped over my chair. I lifted it and brushed off a few specks of makeup slate before slipping into it. In the small bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection one more time. Yes, my eyes were puffy and my posture slumped, but there was fire smoldering there too. With trembling determination, I drafted a quick text to Lauren. Morning. I'll see you at 2 p.m. with Miss Caldwell. I still want answers and I still want us to be honest with each other. No more surprises. I hit send before doubt could creep in. Then I grabbed my bag, laptop, folder with trust docs, sketchbook tucked inside, and headed out the door, leaving behind the heap of discarded dress and the ghost of my collapse. Because even collapse can be a turning point, and in every crack, there's a way for light to get in. The next morning, I woke to the gentle hiss of rain against my bedroom window and the muted glow of dawn seeping through the curtains. My limbs felt heavy, as if every emotion from the night before had rooted me to the mattress. I lay there, listening to the soft patter of droplets, and wondered how I'd ever find the strength to keep going. Then my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Chloe, hey, I know yesterday was brutal, but I just heard about a freelance gig that might be perfect. Equity stake? Remote? Are you up for a chat? I stared at the message for a long moment. My first instinct was to ignore it. That collapsed part of me still trembled at the thought of deadlines and invoices, but deep down, a faint spark flickered. I typed back. Tell me more. Chloe's reply came almost immediately. Said Chloe, a startup in Bellevue needs a brand refresh. $12,000, 0 cents up front plus 5% equity. You'd design their entire identity. They loved your Lakeview bookstore project. Want me to connect you? My chest tightened. $12,000, 0 cents meant one therapy session plus 2 more. But equity, 5% of a company hoping to raise Series A next quarter, could be worth tens of thousands down the line. I sat up, listening to the rain's rhythm, and let myself hope for the first time in days. Please connect us, I texted. I dressed quickly, in the soft cotton robe I'd slept in, and padded into the kitchen to brew coffee. The first cup was dark and bitter, fogging my head with alertness, reminding me how good it felt to make something, anything, work again. I scrolled through emails, one from Ms. Caldwell confirming our 2 p.m. meeting, another from the trustee freezing the trust amendments, and a third from the startup's founder, Logan Hayes. Hi, Emma. Chloe spoke so highly of you. I'd love to hop on a call today at 11 to discuss the Bellevue project. Let me know if that works. I bit my lip, ran a hand through my morning hair and replied, Absolutely. 11 a.m. works. Talk then. The download of hope felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I'd been coiled tight with anger and hurt. Now, for the first time since that rehearsal dinner, I sensed the coil releasing. By 9 a.m., I was dressed in a simple gray sweater and black jeans, comfortable but presentable, and sat at my desk, sketchbook open, ready for anything. At precisely 11, my laptop pinged. Emma? Hi, it's Logan, said a bright voice on Zoom. He looked like someone out of a tech magazine. Dark-rimmed glasses, a neatly trimmed beard, and crisp white shirt. Behind him, a whiteboard brimming with post-it notes and flowcharts. Hi, Logan, I said, taking a deep breath. Thanks for meeting me. The old me would have been nervous. This me felt steady. He smiled. I've seen your work for the Lakeview bookstore and Fremont Coffee Co. Your ability to merge vintage charm with modern flair is exactly what we need. He slid a PDF across the screen. Brand guidelines, product mock-ups, screenshots of an early wireframe. We're launching a sustainable outdoor gear line, camping gear, backpacks, tents, with an eco-friendly mission. We've raised $500,000, 0 cents in seed funding, and need a complete brand identity by October. He gestured to a timeline: 4 weeks for discovery, another 4 for design iterations, 2 weeks for final asset delivery. I clicked through the slides, feeling excitement bubble up. I can do that, I said. $12,000, 0 cents upfront, 5% equity, plus a $3,000 0 cents bonus if we hit our October launch. He nodded, and we shook on it, digitally. After the call, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the magnitude of it settle. I'd just secured enough to cover my therapist, the legal fees, and my rent for 3 months, with equity that could change everything. My heart thudded with possibility instead of dread. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ms. Caldwell. "Emma, good morning," she said. "How are you holding up?" "Better," I replied honestly. "I have a potential gig that will help with cash flow, and I need your advice on the meeting this afternoon with Lauren and the attorney." We covered strategy. I'd calmly present the frozen trust documents, outline my financial transparency, then propose a mediation rather than a trial. Her voice was reassuring. "You're prepared, Emma. You've done the work. Speak your truth clearly, and the law will back you." I thanked her and hung up, feeling more anchored than I had in weeks. I opened my sketchbook and doodled a quick logo, my first design idea for Logan's brand. A stylized pine tree over an abstract mountain range. The lines felt fluid, confident. By noon, the rain had eased into a fine mist. I decided I needed air and headed to Alki Beach. The shoreline was nearly deserted, just a few joggers and early dog walkers. I shed my sweater and walked barefoot on the damp sand, letting the water lap softly at my ankles. The sea was a cool gray blue, and the sky rippled with silver clouds. I closed my eyes and inhaled the salty breeze. This was my reset. Damp sand underfoot, horizon stretching infinite before me, the rhythmic pulse of waves whispering that I could start anew. I dug my toes into the sand and let my worries wash away, one ebb at a time. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with another message from the counseling center. "Your intake session is confirmed for Thursday at 4 p.m., fee $50, 0 cents. Thank you." A small smile curved my lips. Therapy was a concrete step toward healing, a way to process the betrayal that had cut so deeply. I pocketed my phone and picked up a smooth pebble, sketched a swirl on its surface, and tossed it into the surf. The ripple it made felt symbolic. One action, spreading outward, meeting resistance, but always moving. I stayed at the beach until my cheeks were pink from the chill and my mind had emptied of doubt. Walking back, I stopped at a cafe and treated myself to a matcha latte and avocado toast. $18, 0 cents. I settled at a corner table, opened my laptop, and drafted a project proposal for Logan's startup. Timeline, deliverables, payment milestones, equity vesting schedule. By the time I hit send, I felt grounded and purposeful. The afternoon light slanted through the cafe windows, warming my spirit. I sipped my latte slowly, thinking of Grandma's cabin. The porch bathed in sunrise gold, the steady rhythm of pine needles in the wind. I sketched that image in my notebook, along with a note to myself. Art can be your refuge and your rebellion. Use it to build the life you deserve. At 2 p.m., I joined a Zoom meeting with Miss Caldwell, Lauren, and Mom. This time, I wasn't trembling. My shoulders were squared, and I spoke with calm authority. "Thank you all for joining," I began. "I've provided copies of the trust documents showing the freeze on amendments effective immediately. I've detailed my disbursement history and projected needs for upcoming expenses." I clicked through the PDFs, each page crisply legible. "I propose we engage a neutral mediator to review any further changes. My goal is transparency, not litigation. I want us to move forward as a family without the shadow of doubt." Lauren's eyes brimmed with tears. "Emma, I am sorry," she whispered. Mom looked contrite, nodding. Dad cleared his throat, then said, "Let's consider mediation. This family needs to heal." I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Hope glimmered, a fragile, shining thing, but real. That evening, I closed my laptop and sank into my couch, exhaustion and relief mingling in my chest. I pulled out my sketchbook and drew a final image for the day. Me on Grandma's cabin porch, journal in hand, watching the sunrise. Underneath, I wrote, "Recovery isn't a destination, it's the spark that lights the way." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. I arrived at the Wilshire Trust offices at exactly 10:00 a.m. the next morning, rain-spattered clouds still clinging to the Seattle skyline. My folder, thick with 42 pages of certified trust amendments, bank statements, and legal correspondence, felt surprisingly light in my hand. It was as if the weight of doubt had lifted, leaving only the fierce determination Grandma June had instilled in me. I stepped into the marble lobby, greeted by the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clacking of keyboards. At the reception desk, a young paralegal named Sarah looked up. She'd been my ally since I first froze the trust documents. "Ms. Brooks," she said, handing me a fresh cup of black coffee. "The conference room's ready and Attorney Caldwell will join us in 5 minutes." I nodded, heart thudding. I slipped into the oversized leather chair at the head of the shiny mahogany table. Across from me sat Mom in her tailored gray suit, her posture rigid as steel, and next to her, Lauren's blush-pink blouse felt garish under the room's cold light. Dad hovered in the back, silent and stoic as ever. On the side, 2 trust attorneys in dark slacks consulted their laptops, flipping through digital copies of the same documents I'd printed out. At precisely 10:05, Miss Caldwell breezed in, her presence calming the room like the first warm breeze of spring. She gave me a quick, encouraging nod before taking her seat beside me. "Good morning, everyone," she said. "I understand we're here to clarify recent amendments to the Brooks Family Trust and address concerns about unauthorized withdrawals." Mom cleared her throat. "Yes," she said, voice tight. "We want transparency and to ensure Grandma's wishes are honored." "Absolutely," I replied, voice steady. "That's why I requested this meeting. I've brought certified copies of every amendment, along with a ledger showing all disbursements to date." I flipped open my folder and slid the first document across the table to the attorneys. The original trust, dated March 14, 2010, signed by Grandma June. Next came the amendment from May 3, 2024, signed by a certified notary stamp and Grandma's own cursive flourish, directing quarterly disbursements of $15,000.00 to me through the end of last year. The attorneys leaned forward, eyebrows knitting. One of them, Mr. Reynolds, tapped the screen of his laptop. "This matches our records exactly," he said. "No unauthorized changes here." I took a deep breath and placed the next set of pages on the table. The forged amendment, stamped, April 11, 2025, redirecting my remaining $60,000.00 into an account under L. Brooks Enterprises, LLC. Mom's face drained of color. Lauren's hand twitched. "Your signatures appear identical," Mr. Reynolds observed, voice clinical. "But our forensic analysis confirms the signature on this amendment deviates from Grandma's known handwriting patterns. The notary seal is also suspect. No record of the notary's commission on file." He looked at Mom and Lauren. "Legally, this amendment is void." Mom opened her mouth, then closed it, her jaw working. Lauren's cheeks burned pink. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was fleeting. It was time to pull out the final card. I slid over my disbursement ledger, a spreadsheet stamped by the trustee's office detailing every trust distribution. $15,000 0 cents in June, $15,000 0 cents in September, $15,000 0 cents in December, and $9,300 0 cents in March, each line matching invoices for branding projects, software subscriptions, and studio rent. Then I clicked to the last sheet, L. Brooks Enterprises, LLC, account activity. There it was, 4 withdrawals totaling $12,500 0 cents, dated January through March, to an account whose address was my sister's Delaware mailbox. Lauren's eyes flicked to the numbers. "Emma," she began, voice small. "Mom, Dad," I said. "These withdrawals were diverted without my knowledge. I didn't authorize them. Grandma entrusted this money to me, not to cover someone else's debts." I met Lauren's gaze. "I don't know what caused you to take it, financial hardship, impulse, but you forged the amendment and appropriated it." Her lower lip trembled. I needed it," she whispered. "The down payment on Matt's condo fell through. I panicked." Mom's shoulders slumped as if gravity had suddenly doubled. I am so sorry, Emma," she choked out. "I never meant for you to be hurt." Her voice cracked, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. Dad cleared his throat. "We acted rashly," he admitted. "We thought we were protecting family assets, Grandma's cabin renovations, Loren's wedding costs, but we didn't consider your rights or your feelings." His voice was heavy with regret. I exhaled, tension flooding out of me. "Grandma believed in me," I said, voice softening. "She set up this trust so I could build my future. I've honored that commitment every quarter, but more than that, I've honored her belief in my integrity. I need to know we can trust each other moving forward." Ms. Caldwell leaned in. "Legally, the forged amendment will be rescinded. The trustee will reverse the $12,500 0 cents transfer into your account. Additionally, any future disbursements will require a co-signature from an independent trustee to prevent this from happening again. Does that sound acceptable?" Mom nodded vigorously. Lauren wiped her eyes with a tissue. "Yes, anything to make this right." I allowed a small, forgiving smile to break through. "Thank you," I said. "That means the world to me." The attorneys prepared the new paperwork. I watched as they drafted a co-trustee agreement and an affidavit from Lauren acknowledging the forgery and agreeing to repay the $12,500 0 cents within 30 days. The formality was stinging, but necessary. I needed to protect myself and Grandma's legacy. While we waited for the final printouts, Ms. Caldwell cleared her throat. "Emma, now that the trust issue is settled, I recommend we draw up a formal family mediation agreement outlining how you, Lauren, and your parents will communicate about any future financial decisions. It can include regular check-ins, quarterly reports, and written consent for any disbursements beyond routine distribution." Mom reached for Lauren's hand. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We've been so fractured, and I want us to rebuild." Lauren squeezed her mother's hand, nodding. "Me too." Dad leaned in, voice steady. "Let's do it." The attorneys slid the signed amendments and affidavits across the table. I signed each page in neat, confident loops. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and thought of Grandma's gentle smile. I signed, my name, Emma L. Brooks. Co-trustee agreement, June 17, 2025. In that moment I felt an electric surge of vindication and something softer. Relief that my family was willing to right their wrongs. After we all signed, Ms. Caldwell stood. "Congratulations, you've navigated a complex legal and emotional landscape with grace and integrity. I'm proud of you, Emma." I blinked back tears, hard-earned but not of sorrow. I could almost hear Grandma's voice. "Plant it wisely, pumpkin." Mom rose next, pulling me into a warm embrace. Lauren joined, and soon we were a trio, awkwardly fitting arms around each other at a polished conference table. Dad hovered, smiling shyly, and finally joined the group hug. The trust attorneys exchanged approving glances, then slipped out quietly, leaving us to this human moment. As we filed out of the conference room, Mom exhaled. "Let's skip one more family lunch. Just the 5 of us. No agenda, just us." I smiled. "I'd like that." In the lobby, I spotted Chloe's text. "Just saw your meeting notes. Killing it, Em. Proud." I typed back, "Thanks, Chloe. Can't wait to celebrate." Outside, the sky had brightened, the rain clouds breaking apart to reveal soft blue patches. I felt the same sunlight break across my heart, warm, healing, transformative. I'd turned the tables on deceit and claimed my rightful place in the family legacy. More importantly, I'd shown my family that I was not someone to be underestimated, manipulated, or silenced. As we stepped onto the sidewalk, I slung my tote over my shoulder, sketchbook, legal folder, and a renewed sense of self inside. Lauren fell into step beside me. She reached out and brushed my arm. "Hey," she said quietly. "I owe you dinner." "My treat." I laughed, a light, genuine sound. "Only if you let me pick the place." Mom and Dad trailed behind us, chattering about the lunch, the cabin repairs, and Grandma's memory. I glanced back at them, gratitude swelling. They still had lessons to learn, but for the first time in a long while, we were moving forward together. That afternoon, as I walked toward the Pike Place Market to meet Chloe and celebrate with chai lattes, I thought about resilience and justice, how they're two sides of the same coin. Grandma had taught me to plant seeds with purpose. Today, I'd harvested the fruits of honesty and courage, and in the warm glow of that Seattle afternoon, I knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one I'd write on my own terms, with art, integrity, and the unbreakable spark she'd ignited in me so many years ago. 6 months ago, Chloe slipped into my studio just as I was packing up half-finished logo sketches, carrying her signature oversized tote and that electric optimism that always seemed to hum around her. "Em, you're killing yourself over this trust drama," she said, setting down a box of Earl Grey tea and a fresh batch of avocado toast, her secret recipe, with a dash of everything bagel seasoning. "Let's take a minute." We spent the next hour on my balcony, feet dangling over the railing, sipping tea and letting Seattle's spring breeze wash through our hair. She didn't ask a million questions or dispense unsolicited advice. She just listened, tucking her long brown ponytail behind her ear, nodding when my voice quavered, offering a quiet squeeze of my hand when the tears slipped out. That afternoon she pulled out her phone and booked us a weekend at a wellness retreat up in the Cascades. Yoga at dawn, waterfall hikes, guided journaling by candlelight. "We'll swap spreadsheets for lavender fields," she promised, and for once I said yes without hesitation. On the drive north, Chloe recounted her own battles, burnout at her PR job, the time she nearly said yes to a toxic partnership that promised exposure but delivered nothing but stress. She spoke candidly about therapy, about finding a counselor who taught her that self-care wasn't indulgence but survival. By the time we arrived at the retreat's rustic lodge, I felt lighter, as though every knot of anxiety had loosened. We spent that weekend meditating to the sound of rain on the pine roof, sharing meals cooked by a local chef who insisted on organic, seasonal ingredients, and laughing late into the night over card games by the fireplace. When I scribbled in my journal, "I am more than my family's expectations." Chloe nodded, her eyes shining. "That's the real you," she said. Fast forward to this spring, and I stood in a bright Chelsea gallery space, watching strangers admire the series of mixed media pieces I'd titled Roots and Wings. Abstract panels of pine needles, golden sunlight, and fragmented dollar bills woven into the paint. The opening night crowd murmured appreciatively as I poured glasses of rosé, smiling at friends, collectors, even a couple who admitted they weren't art people but felt drawn to the story beneath the layers. And there, toward the back of the room, was Chloe, arms crossed, eyes glinting with pride, chin tucked in that familiar, thoughtful pose. She slipped me a congratulatory hug and whispered, "You did it, Em. You took your pain and turned it into something beautiful." Chloe's unwavering support taught me the value of having someone who sees you in full color, who holds you accountable but also holds space for your healing. She reminded me that success tastes bittersweet without a friend to share it, and that boundaries, whether with family, clients, or deadlines, are acts of self-respect. On the gallery wall next to my piece hung a small plaque dedicated to CBB, my compass through every storm. Before we left the opening, Chloe dragged me onto the dance floor, a small patch of concrete someone had cleared for a DJ, and we laughed under strings of Edison bulbs, celebrating not just the art, but every late-night tea, every therapy appointment, every courageous step that got us here. That night, as I drove back to my apartment on the Upper West Side, I realized that the side story of our friendship was its own kind of hero's arc, one without betrayal or lawsuits, but rife with its own small victories, the commitment to show up, to listen, and to remind each other that sometimes the best investment we make isn't in a startup or a trust fund, but in the people who light our way when the clouds are too heavy to see the sun. A week after the mediation agreement was signed, I logged onto Instagram to check messages and froze. Lauren had posted a video, her own confession and apology live from her and Matt's newly renovated condo. The title banner read "Truth and Transparency" with L. Brooks in bold white letters. My stomach roiled as I tapped to watch. She began with shaky composure. "Hey everyone, it's Lauren. I owe you all an explanation, especially my family." The camera wobbled as she shifted, revealing the condo's open-plan living room, exposed brick, glass coffee table, and a fresh stack of donation receipts on the counter. My name wasn't mentioned yet, but I felt a chill as she held up a crumpled letter. "I found this letter from Grandma June, dated 2 years ago," she said, voice wobbly. In it, she reminded me that family means more than money, but when I panicked about the down payment for our first home, $24,500, 0 cents for a 2-bedroom in Bellevue. I made a terrible choice. I forged her signature on an amendment, withdrew $12,500, 0 cents, and meant to repay it. I never meant to hurt Emma or steal her legacy. My heart pounded. I'd already seen the legal filings acknowledging this, but seeing her admit it publicly, owning her actions to an audience of 2,300 followers, felt surreal. She paused, her eyes glossing. "I'm so sorry, Em. I hope you can forgive me." She set the letter down and took a shaky breath. "I've set up a GoFundMe to raise the $12,500, 0 cents, plus interest, about $13,200, 0 cents total with fees. And I've donated another $5,000 to the Lakeside Children's Center in Grandma's name, to make amends. A flurry of comments scrolled by, friends praising her honesty, distant cousins sending hearts, even local bloggers reposting the story. I felt my chest tighten, not from anger, but from a complex relief. The public confession triggered a turning point. My sister, the last antagonist standing, had faced her reckoning. By noon, headlines had picked up the story. The Seattle Times ran an article titled "Brooks' Sisters' Trust Drama, A Tale of Betrayal and Forgiveness," detailing both our legal and emotional journeys. They quoted me briefly. This wasn't just about money, but about integrity and family bonds. I'm proud of Lauren for owning her mistake. The piece painted the feud as a cautionary family drama, but I knew the real lesson lay in the possibility of redemption. Later that afternoon, I drove out to Bellevue to see the condo Lauren and Matt were hosting an open house for friends to celebrate their fresh start. I arrived at 4 p.m., the late afternoon light slanting through floor-to-ceiling windows. The place gleamed, new oak floors, soft gray walls, and a framed print of Grandma's cabin porch on the mantel. I carried a bouquet of white peonies, $45.00, and a note to Grandma June's favorite daughter. "Congratulations on your new home. Thank you for making things right. Love, Emma." I knocked, and Lauren answered, eyes red but smiling. She stepped aside, and I followed her into the light-filled living room where Matt poured me a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, $18.00 a bottle. Friends, Chloe among them, milled around, murmuring congratulations. "You made it," Lauren said, voice thick. "Thank you for coming." I set the flowers on the credenza. "Your post went viral," I said gently. "I'm proud of you." She exhaled, relief softening her features. I was terrified no one would understand. I took her hand. "Vulnerability is powerful, and you proved you could rebuild trust." Across the room I noticed a slip of paper taped to the fridge, a balance sheet listing the GoFundMe total so far, $7,850.00, and a personal spreadsheet tracking her plan to repay the remainder by December in monthly $1,000.00 installments. She'd even budgeted $200.00 monthly to donate to Lakeside Children's Center through year-end. The numbers were concrete, transparent, a direct contrast to the shadowy forgery. "Looks like you're 2/3 of the way there," I said, nodding at the sheet. Lauren beamed. "Only 5 more months to go." We embraced, and I realized the final twist of this story. The antagonist's downfall wasn't just legal, it was public accountability and genuine atonement. In witnessing her own exposure, first in the mediation room, then in social media's glare, Lauren had shed the fear that drove her betrayal and chosen empathy. That choice resonated more than any courtroom victory ever could. As evening settled, I retreated to the balcony with Chloe. The condo's terrace overlooked a budding garden of potted herbs and wildflowers. She raised her glass. "To redemption," she toasted. I clinked my glass against hers. "To moving forward." Below us, the sun dipped behind the Bellevue skyline, the sky ablaze with lavender and rose. I thought of every step we'd taken. The pain, the legal battles, the midnight tears, the sketches, the solidarity of friends, and felt gratitude for the way this dramatic arc had resolved. The antagonist's downfall was not a final defeat, but a pathway to growth, not just for Lauren, but for all of us. Returning home that night, I drafted a farewell post on my Instagram, sharing one of my cabin porch sketches with the caption, "Forgiveness is the bridge between what was broken and what can be rebuilt. Proud sister moment." I pressed share and felt a weight lift. knowing that through transparency, reconciliation, and a little public accountability, even the deepest betrayals could yield unexpected healing. And as I drifted to sleep, I could almost hear Grandma June's warm chuckle, whispering that family was always worth fighting for. The morning after Lauren's open house, I woke to the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifting through my apartment. The late June sun filtered in through my sheer curtains, painting soft rectangles of light on my hardwood floors. I stretched, feeling a fullness in my chest that wasn't there a month ago. An ease, even joy, that came from knowing we'd reached a new beginning. By 9:00 a.m. I was on the phone with Chloe, laughing about a typo I'd found in my Instagram post. Forgiveness instead of forgiveness. She teased me mercilessly, but I didn't mind. Our giggles echoed against the walls lined with my latest mixed media canvases, abstract layers of pine needles and sunrise gold, and I realized how far I'd come from that basement night I first broke down in tears. After I hung up, I poured myself a mug of Ethiopian pour-over, $4.50 per cup, worth every cent for the ritual, and sat at my kitchen island. My laptop waited, open to an email from Logan Hayes, the Bellevue startup founder. He'd sent over a glowing recommendation letter and asked if I'd be interested in serving as a mentor for their incoming design intern. I clicked accept, picturing myself guiding a young designer through the same blend of creativity and resilience that Grandma June had taught me. At 11:30 a.m., I headed to Pike Place Market for lunch with my parents and Lauren. We chose a seafood stall where the halibut tacos, $14.00 each, were famed for their crispy batter and tangy slaw. As we sat at a high-top table overlooking Elliott Bay, our conversation flowed easily. Dad teased Lauren about her newfound social media stardom. Mom recounted a story about Grandma June's impromptu puppet shows, and Lauren nudged me, her eyes warm with gratitude. "I'm so glad we're here," Lauren said, lifting her taco. "To family, real family." I clinked tortilla shells with hers. To honesty and second chances. Later that afternoon, I returned home to pack a small carry-on. Tomorrow I'd be flying to New York for a week-long gallery residency, an invitation I'd almost declined last year for fear I couldn't juggle work and family drama. Now I felt ready. I slipped my sketchbook and passport into my tote, added a few dresses and my laptop, and tucked in a memento, the little silver locket Grandma had given me on my 16th birthday, engraved with the words, "Bloom where planted." Before heading to the airport, I stopped by Grandma's cabin, now fully refurbished, the sage-green walls gleaming, the porch reassembled with fresh railings. I sat on the bench, closed my eyes, and let the pine-scented breeze wash over me. In my lap lay a leather-bound journal, pages waiting to be filled with sketches and reflections. I opened it to the first blank page and wrote, Lesson 1. Speak your truth calmly. Silence only empowers deception. Lesson 2. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation of respect. Lesson 3. Forgiveness is an active choice, not a passive gift. As I penned the final line, Lesson 4. Cultivate relationships that light your way. I felt Grandma's presence in the rustle of needles above me, as though she were nodding in approval. That evening, I boarded the red-eye to New York, phone tucked away, sketchbook at my side. On the flight, I sketched scenes from Seattle, the misty skyline, Alki Beach's tide pools, the wraparound porch at Lakeview. Each line felt like a promise to honor my journey, to remember the emotions that drove me, and to carry these lessons into every new chapter. When the plane touched down at JFK, I stepped into the bustling terminal with a sense of triumph. Not for the flight or the gallery show ahead, but for the hard-won peace in my own heart. I'd learned that success isn't just measured in dollars or equity stakes. It's measured in integrity, resilience, and the capacity to forgive. Over the next week, I immersed myself in the residency, leading workshops on storytelling through design, hosting an opening night talk about the Roots and Wings series, and mentoring that eager intern whose eyes lit up whenever I shared a tip on balancing creativity with business smarts. Each moment reminded me that our experiences, both bright and painful, shape the art we create and the connections we forge. On my last night in New York, I stood on the rooftop of the gallery, city lights flickering below, and sent a group text. Feeling grateful for every twist and turn. Thanks for believing in me. See you soon, Seattle. My phone pinged with a flurry of replies. Hearts from Chloe, thumbs up from Logan, a glitter emoji from Lauren. I smiled, tucking the phone into my pocket. As I boarded my flight home, I ran a hand over the locket at my collar and whispered, "I'm home where I'm meant to be." And that, more than any check deposited, any legal victory won, or any gallery show hosted, was the lesson I carried with me, that no matter where life plants you, you have the power to bloom, to build bridges over betrayal, and to create a legacy rooted in honesty and love.